Hi there, boys and girls. Today we're going to continue our books by Roger Hargreaves with Mr. Tickle. It was a warm, sunny morning. In his small house at the other end of the woods, Mr. Tickle was asleep. You didn't know there was such a thing as a tickle, did you? Well, there is. Tickles are small and round, and they have arms that stretch and stretch and stretch. Extraordinarily long arms. There's his little house. Mr. Tickle was fast asleep. He was having a dream. It must have been a very funny dream because it made him laugh out loud, and that woke him up. He sat up in bed, stretched his extraordinarily long arms, and yawned, an enormous yawn. Mr. Tickle felt hungry. So do you know what he did? He reached out one of those extraordinarily long arms, opened the bedroom door, reached down the stairs, opened the kitchen cabinet, opened the canister where he kept his crackers, and took out a cracker. Then he brought it back upstairs. As you can see, it's very useful having arms as long as Mr. Tickle's. As Mr. Tickle ate his crackers, he looked out of the window. Today looks like a tickling day, he thought to himself. So later that morning, after Mr. Tickle had made his bed and eaten his breakfast, he set off through the woods. As he walked along, he kept his eyes wide open, looking for somebody to tickle. Looking for anybody to tickle. Eventually, Mr. Tickle came to a school. There was nobody around, so reaching up his extraordinarily long arms to a high window ledge, Mr. Tickle pulled himself up and peeked in through the open window. Inside, he could see a classroom. There were children sitting at their desks, and a teacher writing on the blackboard. Mr. Tickle waited a minute. Then he reached through the window, and Mr. Tickle's extraordinarily long arm went right up to the teacher, paused, and then tickled him. The teacher jumped in the air and turned around very quickly to see who was there. But nobody was there. Mr. Tickle was enjoying himself so much, he tickled the teacher again. The children in the classroom laughed and laughed and laughed. Finally, when Mr. Tickle thought he had had enough fun, he quietly brought his arm back through the open window. He knew the teacher would try to explain what happened, but Mr. Tickle knew he couldn't. Then Mr. Tickle went to town. What a day Mr. Tickle had. He tickled a policeman on traffic duty at the crossing in the middle of town. It caused an enormous traffic jam. He tickled the grocer just as he was piling apples neatly in his store window. The grocer fell over backwards, and the apples rolled all over the store. At the railroad station, the guard was about to wave his flag for the train to leave. As he lifted his arm in the air, Mr. Tickle tickled him. Every time he tried to wave his flag, Mr. Tickle tickled him until the train was 10 minutes late leaving the station, and all the other passengers were furious. That day, Mr. Tickle tickled everybody. He tickled the doctor. He tickled the butcher. He even tickled old Mr. Stamp, the mailman, who dropped all of his letters into a puddle. Oh dear. Then Mr. Tickle went home. Sitting in his armchair in his small house at the other side of the woods, he laughed and laughed every time he thought about all the people he had tickled. So, if you are in any way ticklish, beware of Mr. Tickle and those extraordinarily long arms of his. Just think, maybe he's around this very moment, while you're reading this book. Maybe that extraordinarily long arm of his is already creeping up to the door of this very room. Maybe it's opening the door now and coming into the room. Maybe before you really know what's happening to you, you'll get tickled. The end. Mr. Tickle. I hope you enjoyed the story today by Roger Hargreaves. Be careful and watch out. Don't let Mr. Tickle get you. See you later. Bye-bye.